I'll try to speak up. I don't want to be yelling, but okay, why are we here tonight? I mean, we talked about things we're concerned about, and it's electric reliability. And why is Ohio at risk for rolling blackouts? We're all tied to a grid, and the electric grid, there's kind of three areas across the nation. We're in the eastern interconnection area, so multiple states, and in the western interconnection area, and in Texas is on its own. I think you heard here a few years ago, it was called ERCOT, they had that major winter storm down there. There wasn't a way to really interconnect and get power from any place else. Texas is kind of on its own.
I want to say too that all 7 of the board members retired, and not one of them lived in Texas.
I don't know that. That could very well be. Next slide. How power gets to you. I may call on Ben here to answer some of these questions or talk through some of this, because he's more of an authority than what I am. But, you'll hear us talk a lot about PJM. What is PJM? It's what they call a regional transmission organizer, and their job, the way I would understand it, is to make sure there's enough electricity when you need it on the grid. So they're telling us that, hey, the power demand should be high. Hey, Buckeye Power, we need more power coming out of your plants, or not just Buckeye Power, whoever is a generating company. In about 13 states is what PJM regulates, and tries to monitor the usage and balance the balancing act of keeping enough power on the line when it's needed. Slide. If you guys have questions, please just stop me, because this won't take a long time to go through. If you got questions on something, just raise your hand or shout out. We'll try to, in regards to this. If it's something else you want to talk about, we'll try to do that after we get through the presentation. How the power gets to you. Ben talked about being part of Buckeye Power. It's our generating, transmit power to all the Ohio electric cooperatives. There's 24 Ohio co-ops. And so you got the generation power station, which here for us is the main one we have is Cardinal Station, which is down at There's 3 generating units there at Cardinal, 3 coal-fired generating units. We also have parts of OVEC, which is another coal generation. We have at least two other gas plants that are peaking plants in western part of the state. And we have some solar and some renewable biogas.
A little bit hydro.
Hydro, that's right. So we have a diversified mix, but we are heavy in coal production, in coal-fired generation. So when we talk about generation, we'll talk about transmission. Okay, so where are issues when we talk about reliability this year, when we talk about where's the shortfall at? And it's actually some of both. Shortfalls in generation, shortfalls in transmission, as far as the PJM area. Guernsey, Muskegon, Buckeye Power has all the power that our members need, plus some. When that power goes on the grid, it's diverted wherever it's needed. It doesn't go from Cardinal directly to your home. It may be diverted and go to AEP customers or anywhere on that 50-stick grid. So transmission is another area where there's weakness. We need more transmission, and depending on where these loads are going. We hear a lot of talk around the Columbus area about all the load that's coming in from the Columbus area. Gas centers, or what it might be, they're heavy uses. So those areas up there not only don't have a lot of generation and stuff on that, they don't have transmission lines. And then there's, from transmission goes to substations in your area that we own. We own 13 substations. So these transmission lines are owned by AEP. We own 5 to 6 miles. We actually own 5 to 6 miles of transmission line. But other than that, we're supplied by AEP. From the substation, that's where it comes to your home. It goes on the distribution line. We're a distribution cooperative. So from that substation, then it goes to your home. Many times you'll have an outage from a tree falling through the line or what have you. We are the cooperative power distributor. And then you are what's the owned by you, the members. And we're having this meeting tonight because we're concerned about your future, about having enough power for you. I doubt that AEP will have enough meetings with some of these constituents like we're trying to do tonight. But that's our goal, that's what we try to do, is be as informative and educational as possible. Okay, how's the power get to you? I already mentioned some of this. We're 68% coal, 28% natural gas, 1% wind and solar. We have biogas, around 1% and around 3% hydro. So that's kind of the energy mix of generation that we have here for our Ohio. For your co-op and your co-ops in Ohio. Then you got anything to add at this point?
No, nailing it so far.
Yeah, so I would say that. Why coal? This one's yours. This one's yours. Why coal plants are closing? You know, we've got ample coal, 200 years of coal in this country. Why are they closing? They've proven to be a good source of generation. We've cleaned them up over the years. We've spent $1 million, I think, at least, in cleaning up the 3 folks, actually the 2 coal plants we had, and then now one of the third plant. So why are they closing? Well, it has a lot to do with regulations. EPA regulation says, you have 50 standards. It becomes too costly. So many generators, not necessarily co-ops, have decided we're getting out of the generation business. We can't afford to meet, we either can't just afford it, or there's no technology available to meet all these standards. The plant that you all own, Cardinal Plant, is one of the cleanest in the world. Some of the regulations that are now wanting to be imposed, even it cannot meet these requirements. Yes.
Is it true that the government was paying the ladies plants 10% profit for 10 years profit? They knocked the plant down, tear it down, knocked it down.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, there are deals made, incentives made. I don't know about that. I mean, we have a plant. We bought AEP's generating plant out of Clark. There were three units down there. We owned 2 of those. And then about 4 years ago, AEP wanted out of generation business down there. So we offered to buy unit 1. So in doing that, but kind of before that, AEP had made also a deal with the Sierra Club that they were going to close that unit in 2028. So we had a desire to have unit 1 instead of unit 3. If we had to give up 1, we had to give up unit 3. It didn't match the other. So we made a deal to buy unit 1, but in 2028, by the end of 2028, unit 3 will be closed because of the agreement. Right. Sierra Club made an agreement with AEP. We just buying unit 1. That's the issue. We shut one of those 3 units down. So it wasn't a deal that also that we made. So they required us to buy the unit. That was
Hey, Brian, we need to speak up a little bit more.
all right.
Best you can.
Okay, we were talking about the 3 units of coal plants we have down there, and one of them was AEP. We have now bought it, but in the agreement when we bought it, we had to hold to the same agreement that AEP made with the Sierra Club some time ago, and that unit would close by the end of 2028. So we exchanged. We took 1 and we're going to close our unit 3. Basically the same output. 1 and 2 were brother and sister built, and we wanted to operate those 2 together versus having 2 and 3. So unit 3 will shut down, barring some miracle. It'll shut down by the end of 2028, if not before. It has to be shut down by the end of 2028.
How did people think that, where was the electric going to be coming from that replacement?
That's a great question.
Did they not have that in the agreement? Did nobody ask that question? What happens to those folks who be buying it and the future customers? They just sold out on this.
I say that the current administration it's very clear they want to move toward more renewable.
Well, that's fine, but you can't shut something down before you've got a replacement. I mean, you don't get rid of your car until you you
I
have
take
to
her to
replace
Washington.
it.
Next time I go to DC, would you like to go with me? Tell the regulators that, because that's basically the story we're telling. We are not against renewables, we're not against wind and solar, but don't do that until, don't mandate these other things until we
Maybe
have a
the
replacement.
Sierra Club can give up their electric.
Sounds like a good idea to me. Might get your attention, right?
We need more electric cars, huh?
Yeah. That's another.
How big a bearing do you think that electric cars have on the grid and challenging us?
I'm not sure Ben or somebody that knows the answer to that. I mean, it's gonna put a stress on the system.
Well, that's what
Depends
I
on-
think.
Depends on where they are, is it out the end, for us, is it out the end of a line and we got, 10 or 12 cars on a line that we wasn't built for that? I don't know the exact answer, maybe Ben would have a comment on that.
So, yeah, I mean, at the same time that there's this push to, retire fossil fuels, there's a simultaneous push to use more electricity, right?
Yeah.
To electrify vehicles and to, electrify our homes, try to get natural gas or propane out of our homes. And while, those might be good goals in the long run, you try to do this at the same time, it's gonna be really hard to make the math line up. And yeah, a lot of this is happening far too quickly for us to replace it with new generation.
What about Bitcoin generation?
Bitcoin, and yet, whether it's Bitcoin or not, data centers are much more of a near-term concern. And electric vehicles or anything else, these data centers use electricity like nothing we've ever seen. I mean, Brian, I don't know if you have slides that are gonna cover this, but I mean, the projection in Ohio, it's taken us, 100 years or so to get up to the amount of demand we have in Ohio right now. And the projection is that we might double that in the next 5 years from data centers alone. And, you have you hear the data centers, you hear all the stuff about AI, and it's real, and they're investing in this. We read the news, Microsoft just paid Constellation to restart a 3 Mile Island. They want the power, they're willing to pay for it. And I think, we're up against it now because, we can't build new generation faster than we're closing.
Sounds like we're overselling.
Promises.
Yeah, I think if you've watched the news, you'll see where AEP is trying to limit that in that central Ohio area to say you can't put in something any bigger than 25 megawatts. It's a cap. Well, for just an example, what is 25 megawatts? I mean, we have 13 substations. What is our capacity? What's our largest substation in the US to be today? When we build it for 10, 12 megawatts,
12, 16 megawatts.
that would be our maximum for 2,500 customers probably on. So just to put that in perspective, we're building one substation for one account that would be at least twice, if not bigger, than what our capacity is. We're not using that much capacity on that system. We're not selling 10, 12 megawatts at a time. Anyway, a lot of our substations are using 3 to 5, 6 megawatts probably. So it is huge, the amount of power that they are going to require when those data centers, Intel, any of those kinds of those buildings. The only difference with Intel is it brings a lot of jobs. The data centers, 5, 6, 7 jobs to one of those facilities.
Permanent, yeah.
Permanent.
A lot of construction jobs.
Right.
Permanent.
They bring a lot of jobs.
What's that?
They take away from the middle income person who doesn't have the money, like, to keep going with the way it's going, because I'm hearing you say wanting to get rid of natural gas and propane. I had electric, hated every moment of it. My house was dirty, walls got dirty, and my bill was ridiculous. So I understand it, but to the average Joe Schmo,
And just get me wrong, we are not advocating.
I know.
Okay, we are not advocating to go all electric.
I
We
get
want to
that.
sell electricity, don't get me wrong, I mean, that's what, you sell enough electricity helps keep everybody's bill actually a little more in line. But anyway, yeah, that's what those, I say the regulators, those in the current administration wants to see is to go away with fossil fuels. And again, we're one, and we believe all the above. I mean, we think nuclear is good. It should be part of the mix. Now, and they've come a long way in nuclear as well. And I know nobody wants that in their backyard, but that is 24/7 when you start that thing up and it runs for 12 months, 13 months, you don't have to worry about it. You shouldn't have to worry about it, but it's there, power's on and it's there for your use. So, anyway, so that's what's going on, that's kind of what's going on. Anybody else have anything want to add to a particular slide?
One quick question.
Yeah.
How old are those units now?
First one's from 1967, unit 3 was
67 was the first, this is when they were built, now they've been
Right.
refurbished.
Right, I understand.
67, 74, maybe, and then one in the early, unit 3, like,
Unit 3 was in the 70s.
was in the 70s. Okay, so two of them built in the late 60s and one in the 70s. But they have been,
Because you gotta understand, I'm an old retired heavy industrial electrician. And I worked at Conesville Contractors. And me and unit 1 and 2 had something in common. Birthday. That's how old they were.
Right.
4, 5, and 6 were built in the 70s.
okay,
But yeah, I understand about stuff wearing out. I'm just wondering how close do you consider those units down there to be at end of life?
Ben, that's a better question for Ben. I mean, we spent a lot of money refurbishing, continue to maintenance. I think we expect to go back.
We expect that they still have a lot of life, at least 20 to 30 more years, if, as far as maintenance goes, 20, 30 more years of these guys. And yeah, kind of the way we often look at it, as somebody made an analogy to vehicles. We look at these plants like, yeah, it's a used car, it still runs great, but we can keep it running for a long, long time. And we'd like to keep it running as long as we can, because the stuff that we've installed on this in recent years, within the last 10 to 15 years, the environmental equipment, it was not cheap. We spent over $1 billion on it. We still have hundreds of millions of dollars in debt to still pay off. And so these units still operate at lower cost than anything else we could get. And on top of that, if we did have to shut it down, not only would we have to immediately start paying more per kilowatt hour, but we'd also still have that hundreds of millions of dollars of debt to pay off. And so if you think of it like a used car, we're kind of like, can't we at least wait to pay this thing off before we think about shutting it down or getting something new?
It sounds as though at least you're one of the ones that believe PM stands for preventive maintenance and not post-mortem.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, you got a question?
Who's got that gas generating plant in Byesville? Where's that electricity?
Well, it goes on the grid. I think they probably have, I don't know exactly who's buying that power, but they have, I assume they have contracts with that, the gas power plant, the combined cycle. That's a merchant plant, so they would have contracts with basically Southern PJM, and AEP may be buying that power, you know. They would be offering that up to the market. And I assume they have some of already sold, I just don't know exactly. That's not owned by co-ops, it's owned by investors.
Which leads to the question, when PJM limits sales, do they do it by substation? How do they determine when shut off?
I think that's a great question, and that's kind of what we're trying to work through here. Ben's been part of this, I don't know, Ben, if you want to take that or not, as far as how does PJM decide? I mean, I think, as far as which area gets asked to divert out.
Is it by substations or is it by individual meters?
No. So just in case, I'm not sure if everyone heard the question.
Can you speak up as much as you can, Ben?
Sure. The gentleman asked about when there is a shortfall, and a total shortfall across PJM, if generation is just not meeting the load, how do we determine who gets shut off? And PJM does not make that determination. PJM issues an order to everybody in PJM to say, we've got to drop load. So if we're 5% short, everyone's got to drop 5%. And then it's up to the individual companies that have the ability to turn things off to drop 5% or whatever that percentage might be to make it work.
So that, in this case with smart meters, that could be by meter rate.
In theory, yeah, with smart meters, it could be by meter. If you don't have smart meters, you might just be turning off breakers somewhere in a substation. Of course, with us, if we have water heater switches, those sorts of things that we already have that really don't disrupt like that much, we're obviously gonna advocate that those happen first. And if that's not enough, you know, unfortunately, turning some things off is always gonna be better than watching the whole grid collapse.
We are headed in this direction.
Yes, we are headed in this direction. Right now, we are okay. PJM has a reserve margin, so every single year they look at how much load they're projecting, and then they make sure they've got that much generation plus a reserve margin. In recent years, that reserve margin has been shrinking, and in the forward projection, because of the data center growth and because of the generators shutting down, we're looking at a crossover, honestly, in the next 4 or 5 years. Now, how we deal with that is going to be a big challenge. You know, it's easy for us to look at this and say the data centers are causing most of the problem. As long as we're shutting them off when we need to, we should be okay. And if that's the way things go, maybe we will be able to be somewhat okay and be able to ride this out until we get more generation. But we're not confident that that's exactly the way it's going to work out, and we're afraid, of course, that we might get worse.
Oh, it is.
How long is one area shut off? Is it how it's short and another area shut off? Shut off one area for a day or what?
The question was, how long is one area shut off versus another area? And again, this is determined as locally as possible. And so if I think, like, I might refer to you, but what we would typically advocate for is to try to roll this as much as possible. In the worst case scenario that we had to have one of these events, and say we knew it was gonna last for 8 hours or God forbid 24 plus hours, I think we'd advocate to try to, you know, share that load and say, okay, we have to turn off over here. We'll wait a little while, turn that back on, and we'll have to turn off over here. I don't know, like, Ryan, if you want to share a little more about your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we would be shooting for something in the time range of a 15-minute to 60-minute time frame. Again, like the gentleman up front here just asked, he asked if weather plays a big part in that, and it plays probably the biggest part in it, whether we are a summer peaking or winter peaking mode. And that's what happened there a couple Christmases ago during the shortfall at that time. We come very close to this, and that's kind of what sparked all this discussion. But, you know, obviously if it's winter time and it's cold out, we're gonna be trying to keep those rolling times a lot shorter. If it's summertime and it's super hot out, obviously that'll play a part in it, but maybe not as important as the cold times. But weather plays a huge part in it. A weather event such as a hurricane or a big event like that can play a part in it. I mean, a hurricane's getting ready to hit Florida right now. If that large storm would come up through Ohio and devastate part of the transmission grid system in PJM, that could initiate a process like this as well. So we have a very diverse transmission system where we're fed by both 138,000 volts and 69,000 volts, fed from many different sources. Since we cover almost 9 counties in the state of Ohio, that means that we're not sure that every area is going to be affected when we are called upon. Our Cambridge folks may not be affected at the same time that the Zanesville side of our system is, or vice versa. So, yes, sir.
What happens to the 60 cycle person account? You gotta maintain with all this switching down, switching back to like they,
We kind of do that now. I'm sure you have.
I didn't know whether that, how it worked best.
For us, we have the AM on heat
point I'd like to make is there's a lot of scenarios that could happen. Some of them could be just like what Blake talked about. It could be controlled at the transmission level, the AEP level, saying, you know, hey, this transmission line is overloaded. We need to turn off some load off that load. Or it could be generation based, just not enough generations. And, you know, how that unveils is yet to be determined, I guess. But it has happened as far as the call. Back in December 22, the 22nd, 23rd, or 23rd and 24th, the CEO of Buckeye Power gets a call at 3 o'clock in the morning and says, you need to shed load. That was kind of unheard of. Now, they were anticipating rolling blackouts. It did not happen. I'm guessing because it was on a weekend, on a Christmas holiday, a lot of businesses were shut down and was able to help some of that. Some of you in the Tuscaloosa County area and Grizzly County area, remember that. It was really cold and you didn't have power for a while.
And at that time, your power plant produced more than we used. And one of the first times we really made money at a power plant being producing for somebody else besides ourselves, because we had that stockpile of coal. And we weren't counting on the gas that nobody could get that day because it was cold and the price of gas went up that morning. The coal-fired power plant is a godsend.
What's the percentage of electric usage since the electric cars has come into this equation?
I would say on our system, it's had very little of any impact, but I don't know.
It's still very small. I'm not sure what the percentage is. Small.
All right, we'll try to move on. We'll answer some other questions. Okay. What is NERC? It's North American Electric Reliability Corp. It's a not-for-profit organization that kind of helps reduce the risk to the security and reliability of the grid in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. So it's kind of has all that area there. PJM, severe cold weather event can lead to energy emergencies. Both of these organizations are putting out, I'll say, warnings to us to prepare. This meeting is not to scare everybody. I mean, I just want everybody to be informed. When we leave here tonight, be informed and be prepared. You know, if that is having a whole host of generators, great. If it's just, preparing for a normal outage, but just being prepared that it could happen, especially when there's a weather event going on. The forecasted peak demand has risen while resources have changed very little. PJM's adequate resources for normal winter conditions, but their generators are vulnerable to outages during extreme conditions. So, anyway, I don't think, when we talk about losing coal plants, I don't think there hasn't been a generation come online to offset what we've lost in the last 7 years. Electric grid risk is rising. Demand for power keeps increasing. We talk about EVs, we talk about data centers, whatever it might be. We're all seem to be using more electricity in our lives. While the supply is changing. I think somewhere we have a slide here that talks about in 2009 there were 21 coal-fired plants here in Ohio. Today there are soon to be. So what's making up that difference? Basically, Ohio has become a net importer of power. We're not generating enough power within Ohio to take care of our own needs, which I don't think personally is a good thing.
How does Washington respond to you when you say you secure something?
I'd say 3 or 4 years ago, there are legislators that are definitely into it. I would say in the last year and a half, they are all starting to pay a little more attention. Now, I'm not saying they're ready to just, keep burning coal and keep burning gas, but they are. PJM now is listening. They didn't used to listen. I don't think they are. Those individuals, and I said legislators, are now they're paying attention. I think a lot of that is they start to realize, hey, we're not there yet. Wind and solar, fine to have that kind of thing, but we can't take these others all offline until we have enough backup. Guess what? Back in December of 22, there wasn't any wind and there sure wasn't any solar that night. So unless you're going to have a battery backup, until they, I'm going to say perfect storage or make it more commercially available, I'm not going to say perfect. effectively. Once that happens, solar becomes more of a game changer, because it has improved. But when the lights go down in the winter, the sun goes down, you still need heat, you still need to cool, or whatever it might be. So, again, the extreme days are what we worry about. So if you hear something talking about a peak alert, or we put out a message to you over email or something, we appreciate, we pay attention to that, not for our sake, but for your also, there's enough power to go away. The grid demand exceeds supply. We've talked about that kind of all night. It's a concern for us, for all of you. And PGM, if they have those rolling blackouts, PGM is doing their job if they ask us to curtail load. So they don't want the system basically falling. Conservation, PGM will first tell power. I think some of these questions have already been answered. PGM will first tell power generators to ask consumers, will be asking you to conserve load. I think Ben mentioned it, the first thing that we would probably curtail would be our water heaters. We would probably turn it off. When you see that red light on, you call and say, hey, my water's full. And that would be our first, and that gets us roughly 4%, 5%, I think, across the state if all those switches are working. Jersey Steam will relay that information. Another key thing tonight is find out how are we going to get messages to you. We'll relay that over Facebook, over Smart Hub, and any other means that we can. But any of you tonight, I think the girls and you guys have talked to you back there about, if you haven't signed up for Smart Hub, please do that. That's the way we can, there's ways you can pay your bill and all that kind of thing, but that's the way we can communicate to you by email or by text. You have to sign off and we can do that. But that's one way that we can communicate with you. On many occasions, we're not going to be communicating unless it's something that we feel you need to know about.
I have a question.
Yes.
The government has a system. They can mass call everybody and tell you something. When they go to something. Can you tap into that for your electric customers? They mass call? That's something that could be looked into. It'll be faster than any other method to get our message word out.
I don't know if they're able to call that or not. I remember they used to call it reverse 911, and I think that's just public entities that have that. At least the source that I was aware of. You had to be a public entity, and I don't know, maybe we can share with that as a question. A lot of people today, maybe not only you, but a lot of people today, they want to get their news and their information on their phone. Listen to radio. It isn't like it was 80 years ago when your power was on. You used to send us a postcard. My power's out. We don't know that. And we got it the next day. But anyway, that's times have changed.
How far in advance do we get notice?
That's a great question. And I think that's the timeliness of that. We're not going to have, we likely will not have, we won't have days to let you know. I assume it'll be hours. Now, we may know the weather forecast, and we can put people on alert, but how many times do you cry wolf to where people don't pay attention?
My concern is, we're 100% electric. We live in DMV. Don't have any water, don't have internet, don't have a phone, don't have zero. That's the only reason why I'm asking, how much notice do we have? So we just, surprise!
Yeah,
If we lose power, we got nothing. I can't flip the bill, I can't do anything. So this is all.
Right, I understand, that's a great question, and I think we would notify it as soon as we had reasonable suspicion that it could happen. But I do know, like I just said, the crying wolf, we used to put that out with, we used to put a lot of the media alerts out on the radio about conserving electricity, and about a peak alert. After a while, were people paying attention to that? Were you getting people to curtail load after they've heard that message every day for a week? Do they think, well, when they power my power needs go up? So I agree, we need to try to notify you as soon as we have any inclination at least initially here, that could be done.
Through the smart hub, will there be a target like on the PJM load where we can watch and see? I used to work in a small steel plant in Northwest Ohio. We were on co-op, and we would actually do curtailments, because we could drop our loads significantly. But if that's what we would have access through Buckeye Power and be watching that load, and we would know when we needed to curtail. We could also get alerts and call us and remind us, but we can actually physically monitor that ourselves, because are we gonna have some kind of access, or we can watch that?
Yeah, I don't think you'll have an overall system
Yeah.
view. You'll have your own account. You can see, actually, it's not real time, it's next day. So you won't have real time visibility. The day after, you'll be able to see what you did.
Right, so I can't flip on and see how much I'm pulling. Is there a way to see that on the smart meter? Or it just shows you as you're drawing? It doesn't really show you a flow?
Just as you
I don't know if that feature's available or not, but we're not aware of it. I was gonna ask to see if that's something that could go.
My concern is about medical things, like the other night when we offered money to the but, you know, like CPAP machines or other people on more serious things, you just knew you weren't gonna have yours that night. I mean, is there something people should do to be able to have electric for things like that, when this is gonna be happening more frequently? And in the middle of the night,
I think it's,
concern.
I think it's almost been a misconception that our members have been told over the years to make sure we know if you have medical devices that need electricity. Because it really depends, if we have a normal outage, and you live at the end of the line, and the line is broke before you, we can't prioritize you till we get it fixed before you get to you. So people think if they call us and tell us that you have medical devices, that we're gonna put you on first. And honestly, that there, it's fine that we know that, but I would still, if I'm you, I would have a backup plan, a small generator, or a extra oxygen bottle, whatever it might be, because, I mean, that could be completely out of our hands. We may wanna come and get you on, but it's just physically not possible in some cases. So, I mean, we take that information, we have it on record, but it may or may not actually play into how we can turn the power back up. So I would have a backup, where it's a small generator to run those devices, whatever it might be. Or, okay, where else could I go and get that? Could I transfer to somebody else's house, a neighbor's house, or whatever?
There are battery backup systems for medical devices.
Gotta have money to pay for them, though.
And again, we're gonna do all we can do to keep your power on. I mean, we're not wanting to have that, but there's just some physical limitations that it maybe doesn't work.
You're seeing a time where we're gonna be at a peak time, and you're sending out this warning and stuff. Okay, well, is there gonna be a time where you say, wow, we know it's gonna happen, and then you're gonna send another warning out?
I think that would be the ideal situation to happen.
You know, you give us the first warning, and then let us know that it is going to happen.
We've got some notices of 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely the way we want to do it, is to say, we're predicting that it's a possibility, okay, it's an increased possibility, okay, it's definitely happening. But of course, if this happens, it happened because nobody saw it coming, you know, and we were able to prevent it, from a very high level on down. And so I guess in the ultimate sense, we're not really sure exactly how much notice we're gonna get and how much we're gonna be able to give, other than we will commit to giving as much notice as we possibly can.
Can be some issue, people, there's a flood or something. You gotta get, I know they can.
that would be the best. Ultimately, it would be best if you had your own generation. Okay? So everybody can't afford to do that.
You would pay property tax.
Are some of these larger consumers, plants and so on, asked to have backup generation? Like hospitals and, plant, production plants and so on?
Yeah, they typically, the hospitals, the medical facilities almost always by rule have backup redundant electric facilities and also fully redundant generators.
But, manufacturing, are they,
I'd say most manufacturers, it's kind of a business decision. Do they
why are they
ultimately?
not asked because they're a larger consumer, so that people in their homes have the
And that's where it's up to the local utilities to decide, hey, if we have the option of turning off the manufacturer versus turning off residential, which one do we do and when? How does that enter into an overall plan? What they can do.
they have more drugs than the rest of us. Except the home.
Okay. This talks about, somebody asked about how long power is going to be off. If conservation doesn't restore it, they put out the warning, let's conserve power. If that don't take care of it, PG&E could implement a mandatory load shed or temporary rolling outages to achieve the balance. What is load shed? That's what we've already been talking about, what it is, what it could look like. Could happen at the transmission level, turning off our substations. We could be turning off circuits out of our substations. Kind of any and all of that. Buckeye Power would probably turn off hot water tanks at that point in time. And somebody brought up the AMI meters. That is not our intent to turn off. That may be actually for us, maybe the best thing for all of you, because we could possibly cycle them in smaller, could cycle the whole system, possibly, 15, 20 minutes, a half hour increments. I'm not sure what how often that can happen, but, we never practiced, never actually did this. Not the intent of why we put it on you.
One of the other benefits of the AMI meter for us is we're able to monitor voltage. If we are asked to shed load or transfer load, because that's one of the other options that has been disclosed to us. We may be asked to shed load, or we may be asked to transfer load. Like I said earlier, we have a diverse transmission system. So it may be that, hey, we need you to take load off of transmission line A. We might be able to work towards transferring some of that load to transmission line B. And we're able to monitor the voltage at your house now with the AMI meters as we transfer more and more load to make sure we're still meeting the threshold of reliable electricity to the homes. So that is, to me, in engineering and operating the system, especially during storm times, for Rob and myself, that is the benefit of AMI. Being able to see what that end of that line's doing, and we know, okay, we can put a little bit more over on that station, or hey, we're having troubles over there with that voltage, or something.
What would be your lower limit? Like per leg?
116.
You know how closely you are and doing all the new smart meters?
We are virtually complete.
Okay.
We have a handful of residential accounts that we are trying to finish up.
Yeah.
Contractors off the system, so Rob,
Eli said 310 or something like that today.
so we're finishing them up ourselves, so.
Yeah, that's fine.
And now we have some commercial accounts that I think we just got the meters in, and
Yeah.
some of them to finish up yet. Most of you on your bill, if you have an AMI meter, should have seen it in September. What did it say? Co-op reads meters, so hallelujah, right? A lot of you were concerned you weren't able to read that meter and called in. Thank you for that. We appreciate those who want to make sure they're paying their bill. But we are reading that meter now. We get those numbers back in on.
You can still read your meter, you just don't have to call it in.
You don't want to read it, but you don't have to. So, talked about this already, the load shed, and, you know, the ideal is in 30 minutes to an hour increment. That sounds all well and good, if we're sitting here and able to flip those switches, but if we're out in the field like we have to do it, I'm not gonna promise you it's gonna be 30 minutes to an hour, it could vary. But our goal would not to be to have, you know, if it's our choice, is not to have, you know, just Guernsey County surely take care of all of those, and Scoopy County not have to do that. We've talked about that time. Anyway, that's, again, there's more manual tasks at the substation level that we have to do, until someday we're able to, you know, maybe move toward a SCADA system, where we can do more of that transferring. Safety's a priority, and I have a power outage plan. That's what tonight is. Have a plan on how you're gonna deal with it. Again, a lot of times, nothing different than what maybe would be that we would tell you in case there's another outage. I mean, we've had outages last for days. Major storms come through, and so just prepare for that. You have an alternative source of power. All these slides are they're on your pamphlet there, so if you can't read these. A go kit of safety essentials. You know, a kit with water, flashlights, battery operated radio, cell phone charging devices for your car, cell phone backup charging devices, blankets, non-perishable, the same things that we would tell you at any other kind of to prepare for an outage. Medical equipment, somebody asked about medical equipment. For people that require a medical device, best to have an alternative power source. And an alternative location, maybe you have somebody that's not right on that line, but it's a few miles away, and they have power, you know, try to help neighbors. Okay, is that the last slide? Okay. Member communication, we've asked about that, that's another big topic for tonight. It really has been the last 9 or 10, 12 months. Been trying to put out the word about trying to improve our communication. We needed updated information from you all. How many of you still have a landline? There's several hands didn't go up. So those that didn't go up, have you told us what your phone number is? Like, do we know what your cell phone number is? Because we many times try to call people, guess what? There's no landline. So make sure we have more contact information so we can, if we need to, get over it.
Do you realize how many of us do not have good cell reception at home?
Well, I understand.
Stand in front of a window.
We're fine if you're using landline, but my point is just make sure we have the correct phone number. That's all I mean. I'm not telling you to go to cell phones. I'm just saying, make sure we dial a lot of times trying to get a hold of a member, and the number's been disconnected because they did away with it, and it's still the primary number on your account. That's all I'm saying. Make sure we have the right information. Other methods. Smart Hub. If you can, sign up for Smart Hub. If you don't have one on your cell phone, we can get to it on the internet, right? You got a computer. If you don't have the smartphone, you can't use it on the internet with the computer. Sign up so we can email you. When you sign up for Smart Hub, make sure you check that you will let us send you an email, or that you will let us text you, or send you a call over an IVR, a mass message going out there. There are a lot of phones. Somebody mentioned the reverse 911, or what I call reverse 911. Facebook, the website. Heaven forbid somebody listens to radio. We're trying to use that as a means. Somebody had their hand up there.
Is the IVR, is that, like they do for schools, to call schools out, where it's just like a mass call?
That's how yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot better, because I mean, I'm gonna check my email once every 2 or 3 weeks.
All right, next. Yes.
In general, what radio stations would you be broadcasting to? I live under a rock, for what it's worth. I don't listen to the radio, I don't own a television, I do have a cell phone, do have internet, but if I would have my battery-operated radio with me, because my internet doesn't work because my electric is out, what radio station do you advise?
WHIZ in Zanesville, Cambridge,
Yeah, so basically WHIZ stations or ABC stations.
Okay.
We're currently working with both of those to try and decide who's going
depends on, again, where we, if it's specific to a certain area, that's the station. Facebook. Post to your Facebook page will be made as quickly as possible once we receive notifications from PJM. So on our website and on our Facebook page, as soon as we get it, have somebody available to post that, we'll post that information. Rolling power member communications, again, Smart Hub members, you got to sign up. I think I already said that. And again, verify your contact methods. If you don't know what phone number is on our system, call and ask us, because we need to make sure we have that updated. If you have a new number, a new email address, whatever it might be, we're not going to know that unless you told us that. Graphics, or as far as the website being used on, same as on our Facebook page. Radio, this is like you said, working with local radio stations with the news releases. Okay. This is, okay.
So yeah, we covered a lot of this earlier, we're kind of coming back to the generation mix.
I wanted to talk about the rules. I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, the latest EPA rules that have been finalized, but are currently in the process of being challenged. They're the latest ones that really threaten to shut down coal and also potentially natural gas a lot earlier than planned. I think where we're at with the coal rule is that if it remains in effect as is, it survives any challenges and is unchanged, the things that we would have to do to comply, it would make the plants not be worth running. It would cost too much money, and so we'd have to shut them down. And so, even though ours still run well, this would shut them down by 2032, I think, within the next 5 years.
This is a carbon capture.
Who's challenging this? Who can we contact?
You can contact me. No, it's not too late. You can contact any of the legislators. I think the legislators are hearing us on this, at least the concerns that we have. They understand the deal. We understand a lot of folks, want to reduce CO2, and I don't think we're not against that. Again, I think it's more a matter of slope, right? Are we going to go like this, or we're going to go like this, something like that over time. And so coal, obviously, we're sensitive to that because coal is a big part of our resource. And as I mentioned earlier, we still owe a lot of money on environmental controls that we put in. We'd really like to see us get some more life out of that resource for reliability reasons, and also so that we don't have negative impact to your bills. We think that there's a way to glide this out a little further, have better reliability, and have not negative rate impact, so we can transition to other generating
Are
resources.
they listening to you?
Are they listening to us?
Yes.
More. I'm optimistic. I don't know if I should be, but I am optimistic.
So we need to contact our congressman or anybody in the.
Absolutely.
And by being challenged, we with many generators across the country have filed suit. So we anticipate that will make it to the Supreme Court.
And just explain to them that we agree with it, we just needs to be a slower, we need to have that replacement before we can do it.
But when you started adding wind and solar, how long was the time before you started adding to about 1%? How long did it take to do that?
The question was, once we start adding wind and solar, how long did it take us to get from 0 to 1%? And the 1% is just Buckeye Power's fix, and ours is low. 2004, I think was when we first started adding something that. It's been about 20 years.
So, at the rate of what you're generating with the coal, we'll get another 150 years to get the rest of it.
Linear rate.
If we go ahead,
Linear rate, yeah.
I think it's important too, when you address the wind and solar, that you mentioned in that mix, energy doesn't always blow, sun's not always shining, so there has to be a mechanism to store electricity, and that is a huge piece of the puzzle today that, number one, hasn't been solved, and number two, simply does not exist. So when you start to throw that into the equation, that is an undeveloped technology. It's being worked on, and it is done on some scale, but not a significant scale anyway. And so until that piece of the component is put in, the wind is great when the wind's blowing, and the solar is great when the sun's shining, but on a dead calm night, when it's 10 below zero and the wind's not blowing, if that's what you're dependent on, you are dead in the water. It's that simple.
Texas, you can lose.
Yeah, exactly, you know, and so, I'm just saying there's a lot more to this puzzle than just saying, we're gonna put up a lot of solar panels and we're gonna put up a lot of windmills. There's a tremendous component that has to go into that, and that's how you store electricity. And that is a calculus a long ways from being skinned.
John?
As a member co-op thought of maybe trying to get a large generator to have as a backup at one of the substations, or the PGM, Steel Mountain Altitude, so that it will work when they run out of power.
I don't know if we've actually explored that. We've explored the idea, and part of the group was applied for some help on a battery backup at a substation, but I don't know if anybody's looked at putting a generator at a substation.
And that might be more efficient than 200 homes buying generators to run, even though it's not as efficient as your coal burning power.
I don't see how that could be feasible.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I think your first question is how do you fuel it? If you're fueling it with natural gas, we're running into the same problem we have currently then, because all the natural gas is being used elsewhere. And anything else, even natural gas at that, is unfeasible to try to power it, especially for any.
There's a lot of issues with, I'll say, generation, natural gas. We've got lots of natural gas here in eastern Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, but one of the problems we have is getting pipelines permitted. Because getting that gas to those plants. I mean, there was issues in Texas with gas lines freezing up. I'm guessing the problem with gas lines freezing here in Ohio or the surrounding area. Getting enough gas to those plants. There's issues there we've got to improve on as far as the permitting and actually getting these lines built to get them to the power plants and where we need them. Whether it's a power plant or whether it's a substation, need a generator, there's issues there. Because again, none of us, a lot of people, they don't want a nuclear plant in their backyard, and they don't want utilities running across the property, they keep running. Well, I mean, I get that, but it's something we have to overcome somehow. You're up next.
I'd like to say something to everybody here. Now, who's the gentleman back here that said about the storage?
Mark.
Mark. Okay. Point well taken. I'm an old retired, my name's John Garber. I'm an old retired heavy industrial electrician. So I do have a little expertise on this. And with number 1 being first place and 50 being last place, Ohio ranks 47 in green energy. And part of the reason for that is something that a lot of people should know about. That's Larry Householder and House Bill 6 and the fiasco with First Energy. A lot of that got done away with. But during that time, when I was still working, I trained for a utility grid size solar farm that was going to go down in Congo. And right before they broke ground, the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio said, sorry about your luck, you can't pass any of this cost on. That took care of that. More recently, up in Lake Erie, there was going to be a 8-unit wind farm 8 miles out, and they constantly badgered those people until their funding dried up, and the money that was going for the legal fight for it was coming from Murray coal. So that's the reason why this state is so far behind where they are now. And I love this state. I was born here, I worked here all my life, I'm gonna die here. But to try to say that the regulations that they're trying to impose now is a problem. But the bigger problem is, we haven't, the government here hasn't backed green energy the way they should have.
You may have difference of opinion on that.
I'll repeat it. So, Shirley asked what Buckeye Power's plan is if the scenario comes to fruition that the latest proposed EPA rules are not changed, and we are looking at, we are faced with shutting down our coal resources in a short amount of time. We are already working on this. We're investigating what other options are. Those options include, of course, getting new resources. But realistically, the only resources that you can build today will be nuclear, but we're talking about probably 15, 20-year timeline to get a new nuclear plant in service. So that's not realistic to be an immediate replacement. Solar, you're allowed to build, but of course, it's gonna cost a lot, and we have to build a lot of batteries too. There'll certainly be some rate shock with that. And natural gas is something that still looks like a good resource, but because of the same rules, we're gonna be real gun shy about building any new natural gas. Because it does, make sense, it looks good on paper right now, reliable resource that pencils out, doesn't cost too much, but it's, building a new natural gas plant now in some ways kind of feels like, in 10 years, we're gonna look stupid for that because all of a sudden there's a lot of new rules now and we're gonna be shutting down soon. So we are concerned about that as well. So we're investigating it, but ultimately we're afraid we're gonna have to take a roll of the dice. And the other option we have is to not build a new resource at all, but just buy from market. And that, of course, is the ultimate roll of the dice, is we say, okay, let's just buy from other generators that are out there and let them take the risk. In some years, that might look good, but in some years, prices might go crazy. They might be paying way, way more than we want to for electricity. So it's a tough time to be in right now, but those are the things that we're doing.
I find it interesting, I know large nuclear plants are going to die. What would be wrong with nuclear substitute? Smaller nuclear facilities, spot those around the areas where it actually needed.
I sure hope so. So the question was about smaller nuclear facilities, recognizing that large ones can take 15, 20 plus years to build. But we've had nuclear generators in submarines for a long time. And if it works there, if it seems safe enough there, then why can't we replicate that? I'm sure you and others have heard about some of the progress in small modular nuclear reactors. A lot of startup companies working on this now, trying to crack this puzzle and see if they can make something that works and that's commercially viable. And we are all here for it. If that works, that's going to be phenomenal. Because the promise is that it's just another way to build nuclear, but at hopefully a more efficient, lower cost, and also in a way that's safer too. And so we're really hoping that comes together. Right now, though, there's nothing that's on the market. Like, we can't go out and buy that right now. And so, I guess we could buy a decommissioned submarine maybe. That would be pretty cool. Yeah. But that's something that my fingers are crossed for. We're really really does check all the boxes for us, reliability, for hopefully long-term cost, and then of course it has no emissions. So it should make everybody else happy too.
I have a question. I might have missed, can you explain why that debt is so high?
Why that debt is so high?
Yeah, that you were talking about?
So it goes back to the investments that we made from about mid-2000 through mid-2000s to about 2016, when we were installing the latest pollution controls at the cardinal plants. Those were the pollution controls to basically eliminate practically all of the NOx and the SO4 gases that were coming out still at that time. And so Buckeye Power and the co-ops were faced at that time, less than 20 years ago, with kind of the decision that we're looking at now, where new EPA rules came out. We said, hey, we have to install these controls at significant cost of eventually over $1 billion, but then hopefully we'll get to run the plants for a long time. Or we look to start shutting them down and make a hard decision. And at the time, the co-ops made the decision to say, hey, let's do it. These plants have a lot of life left. Let's install these pollution controls and let's go for it. But $1 billion is a lot, and we're not going to put that in rates in 1 year, so it's spread out over time. And at this point, we're just over halfway there, in paying all those off. And I guess that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't want to shut this down, but I also, you've been here longer than I really wanted you to, so I'll try to get to your questions, but if anybody wants to leave, I want them to have, feel like they can do that. And kind of wrapping up the slides, some of you asked, what can we do? We do have two representatives here tonight who came to listen, not to speak or speak on behalf of their senator or congressman. Jamie's not paying attention back there. But anyway, if they all want to say anything, they're welcome to. I will say, Sheriff Brown has helped us on some issues, pushing back this year on the administration to try to help with some of these EPA rules. Congressman Balderson has led what they call a Congressional Review Act, and I think maybe the senator might even sign on to that to try to say, hey, let's slow this thing down. If that would happen to pass, we go to the president, more than likely he's going to veto it, but I think it does send the right message that, hey, we're not against this stuff, but slow down, let's see if there's a better path forward. So those guys are both here. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I had somebody ask me, do they want to speak? So I want you all to know, if they want to speak, they're welcome to, but I'm not asking them to do that on behalf of the legislature. But how can you all help? Voices for Cooperative Power. If you want to get involved in this process, you want to talk to your legislators, there's a way to do that through the co-ops. And when you come in back there, you could, if you have interest, we have individuals that decide, every month they contribute, I think it's $2 and change to what we call the PAC. It used to be called APE. It is a political action group. Not saying you need to be, but you are welcome to participate. Those dollars are given out to candidates that support the cooperative movement, to support things that our members do. They are Republican, they are Democrat, party affiliation doesn't matter. It is the issues on how they support or not support, I'll say, the co-op world. So there is flyers back there on them. There's also a code you can get to sign up for some of that kind of stuff. If you sign up for the PAC, it can be taken off or added to your electric bill every month. It's like $2 a month, $25 a year. So anyway, if you want to participate, there's a mechanism to do that. Now, if somebody needs to leave, they can. I know we've had a few had to leave. I want to be out of here in an hour, but we had some other questions. This girl here had one, then I'll go to